U.S. climate envoy John Kerry not making President Biden look good after saying Biden had no idea his submarine deal with the UK and Australia would upset the French government.
He asked me, he said, what's the situation? And I explained exactly, he had not been aware of that. He literally had not been aware of what had transpired. And I don't want to go into the details of it, but suffice it to say that the president, my president, is very committed to strengthening the relationship and making sure that this is a small event of the past and moving on to the much more important future.
So we have a lot of Dana, what do you think happened here?
Well, Secretary Kerry, now climate envoy, is sophisticated enough to know that as soon as he said that, he knew exactly what he was saying. And I think that in some ways he's living in the days of yore when he was in charge, right? And when everything ran so smoothly, if you recall that. He was not only throwing President Biden under the bus, which is really bad, and doing it overseas.
Under the yacht.
Imagine, though, if that had been a Republican, right? And how the howls from the Democrats would have been, how dare you denigrate a commander-in-chief when you're on foreign soil? He actually works for the president. Basically, oh yeah, he had no idea. Like, literally has no idea. John Kerry knows what the narrative is about President Biden not being in the loop. But not only that, but he threw Blinken and Sullivan under the bus as well. And you know what? Maybe he thinks it wasn't handled well. And maybe he raised that in the Situation Room and nobody paid attention to him. But it does seem that he knew what he was doing. Then he tried to sort of backtrack. He's like, well, of course, he really wants everything to be fine. And it does sound like things are fine now, working out with the French. But I have a feeling that he knew exactly what he was doing.
What do you think of that, Judge?
Well, I absolutely agree with all the points that you've made. And I think it's interesting the way Kerry starts. He says, he asked me, what's the situation? Why would he be asking the climate envoy what the situation is? Why wouldn't he be calling up Blinken and saying to Blinken, what the heck is going on with France? They canceled the gala. They pulled out 2 ambassadors. What's going on? No, he doesn't do that. So I think Dana's right on the money. I think it's like the days of yore when he was Secretary of State. And I also think that he knew what was going to happen, because all of us now go back to what was the same thing with the generals when he said, well, he didn't remember. Maybe they said it. And so he's kind of conjuring up an idea, a narrative of his fitness for office. But that's just the way I see it.
And that's why I asked you. I want to play this thought from Jen Psaki today in the press briefing room.
You said this president's first love is foreign policy. So why doesn't he know about these things in real time?
Of course he knew about the French being displeased. Let me finish.
Literally had not been aware.
Peter, I would encourage you to ask John Kerry specifically about the context of his comments. The president and the former secretary are also good friends. He relies on his counsel, and as he does of many members of his national security team, but that certainly is not what he was intending to convey.
So, Greg, what I thought was interesting about this, first of all, that obviously was not what she wanted to be talking about, but Jen Psaki comes from Kerry world. She doesn't come from Biden world. So what did you think of her defense?
Well, she had no defense. That's why she had to spin. I think the spinning will be Joe Biden wasn't aware of it, so again, it's not his fault. Right. So now his profound ignorance and possible confusion in this job is his shield against criticism. Hey, it's Grandpa Joe, he didn't know. I think that the Dems like it this way. The less he knows, the better, because he really was elected to be kind of a shell for a whole other group of Democrats, right? He was the Trojan horse.
Yeah,
and raises the question, what else does Joe not know, and when did he not know it? Get that? No?
Yeah. Got it.
She just didn't like it.
She just didn't like it.
No.
When did he not know, and when did he not know it?
He never knew.
He never knew.
No, but that's the funny part.
Yes.
That's been his MO, plausible deniability.
Exactly.
Right? And even the French know. I think when Kerry said Biden didn't really get it, the French said, yeah, you're right, he probably didn't get it. And it takes the sting out of them losing that deal. And John Kerry thought he should have been president. Kerry was in the Senate with Joe Biden. Joe Biden was always a joke in the Senate. Kerry thinks, listen, this guy just doesn't know here. And it slipped, and he did throw him under the yacht. But this is the biggest alliance or military development in the Pacific for decades. This new alliance we have with the Australians and the British against the Chinese. If Biden didn't know about that and the implications about that, that is pretty scary. We not only gave the Australians submarines, we gave them mid-range missiles that can hit the Chinese mainland, hit all their shipping lanes, and China can't do anything about it. They're out of range. So the Chinese are humiliated. They're panicking, and that's why they're lashing out against Taiwan to prop up the regime domestically. But, you know, they're up, you know what's creek.
You know, Jessica, can I repeat my joke again so it gets clipped and people see how brilliant it is?
Yeah,
I think it raises a question. What does Joe not know, and when did he not know it?
Do you like it now, Judge?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.